Okay, hello everybody. Today we are gonna solve the sample questions together, and you have probably tried to solve them. So I try to address any comments or any points in any of the questions, and also I take the questions if any of the participants they have question, I also answer that. And I am recording this session, and I'll upload the recording on Blackboard in along with the answers to the sample question so that it can help you to get to better prepare for the exam. Your exam, according to the email I have already sent you, your exam will be available to you starting from tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., and you'll have until Friday, 8 p.m. to answer that. And that's again on Blackboard, and it has only 70 minutes availability, but you can start it anytime. You don't, it's up to you when you want to start the exam. But whenever you start the exam, you have only 70 minutes to finish that session, and that's only one time entry. So after you get prepared, after you studied, after you watch this session, you can start the question anytime. So with having these kind of logistics things set, let's get started and look at the questions. Like I emailed you, and I explained in my emails, and also we have them in syllabus in the sample questions, and the same as the first test, you will see a combination of multiple choice questions like these, which is a question and asks you which statement is correct or which statement is not correct. It asks you basically to pick one of the items. And for questions like that, what you need to do, you only need to pick the right answer. You don't need to justify why you are picking, for example, item B versus all other items, or you are not picking item D. I don't need any explanation for that. But we also have free response questions at which you are asked to answer or give your short description about something. For example, briefly explain how the CPU helps the operating system to make a safe transition between the user and OS modes. So you basically write something. There's a blank spot here. It might be on a piece of paper or it might be on Blackboard. I'll provide you a space to write your answers there. That you kind of put your write-ups there, and it doesn't need to be a kind of line. It just need to be pointing to the exact thing asked. Here, for example, for this question, we'll be talking, this was a part of the note that giving only 1 point uh, is enough. So, yeah, and not for this series, but for the next series, you might see design questions as well, which is again something similar to open free response questions, but you are basically designing something for that. So it's a free response, but it doesn't say that you just repeat some sentences from text or some you open up some concept from the lectures or slides. No, you design something. You take an approach that we talked about it in the course, and you answer a question. So let's get started. And for the attendance, please feel free to interrupt me anytime. You don't need to wait so that I'm finished with some question or the whole sample question. No, please feel free to interrupt me anytime. That would be a better option. If you have a question, right, ask me right away. So let's get started and start with the first multiple choice question. This multiple choice question says which of the following statement is not correct, and please pay attention to the kind of to the item which is being asked. Sometimes I say which statement is not correct. Sometimes I say which statement is correct. I make it bold in order to kind of make it clear for you to see, but you also need to know that I changed this. It's not like that I always say which statement is not correct. No. So this question asks for the incorrect statement. So let's get started from the first one. Item A says, ALU, register bank, and control unit are three major components in every processor, which is of course true. In the lecture 0, we talked about the uh, we talked about components of a computer and say that central processing unit or CPU is one. And inside the CPU, we have ALU, register bank, and control unit. So this item is correct. So we pass it. Let's get to C. Item C says interrupts help improve the performance of computer system by saving CPU time. Again, that is correct. We said that interrupt is the alternative approach to design when you have someone or that someone, when I say someone, it might be an application or it might be a person who wants to get CPU's attention. CPU can go to that entity, to that person or a process and ask all the time, are you ready? Are you ready? Do you have something for me? Or CPU can leave that person or that individual, and that entity interrupts the CPU, which is of course a better way in terms of performance. So yes, interrupts help improve the performance of computer systems. Item D says, in a time-sharing operating system, multiple processes are on the run at a time. Again, this is correct. In a time-sharing operating system, basically you share the CPU time between a group of active processes. Item B, which is not correct, says CPU I/O interactions are very similar to CPU memory interactions, which is, to me, this question, to be honest, is somehow very easy question. Uh, uh, but also I realize that over time that sometimes multiple choice questions is not as easy that I think for students. So please read the items carefully. This item, if you remember, we had a kind of a whole slide talking about the differences between CPU I/O interactions versus CPU memory interactions. We mentioned to a lot of things. We said that speed-wise or bandwidth-wise, they are different. In terms of technology, they're different. We have a diverse set of I/Os, although C memories are not that diverse. We talked about the fact that I/Os are human-driven. Uh, Basically, this is the human sitting next to the computer that issues some commands, and then at the end, those commands turn into some I/O transactions. So they're human driven. However, memories are not human driven. They are driven by internal processes of your computer. So we had a whole slide talking about differences between CPU I/O interactions versus CPU memory interactions. So they're not similar at all, and they have a lot of differences. So of course, this statement is not correct. So free response question 1 asked about briefly explaining how the CPU helps the operating system in making a safe transition between the user and OS mode. If you remember, we mentioned that in modern operating systems, we have at least two working mode. One is the user mode at which a user programs work, and the other one is the OS mode or kernel mode or privilege mode. There might be different names for that. I just saw something in chat. Yes, you will be able to backtrack, please. Like I said, interrupt me anytime. But please interrupt me by voice. It might be. I try to keep track of chat as well, but I may get into the questions and forget to look at that. Yeah, I was saying that, yeah, there might be different names for that second mode, but basically that's hypervisor mode, or the mode which is, unlike the user mode, is not limited. The user mode is a limited mode, so we don't allow the user to do whatever is possible. However, in the OS mode or kernel mode or hypervisor mode, the process or the application can do whatever it wants. So these are two different modes, at least two different modes that we say our operating system support. But also I mentioned that if there is no support from the CPU or from hardware side, transition between these two modes might be source of some vulnerabilities and might be used for by attackers in order to attack our systems. So, and I also mentioned that in modern CPUs there are physical or hardware facilities or tools that help uh, make this transition more secure. So the question asks about those hardware supports. Give me at least one example of that hardware support. So the answer is here. We can point to timers and counters that we have in CPU. So that timer can be used by CPU in order to take the CPU back from a user program or user application. We also can think of the mode bit that I've talked about. I said that there might be a single bit in CPU that shows at which mode the CPU and the whole system is working currently. That mode bit is again something that helps this operating system to make safer transitions between OS and user modes. So we can point to timers, and here the way timers use timers that can only be set by the operating system and can be incremented, decremented by the CPU, or the mode bit that is only available to the operating system and shows the mode that system is working at currently. So these are two examples, and if you only provide one of them, that would be enough.
I have a question, Dr.
Uh-huh.
Patuti.
Yes, go ahead, please.
You mentioned that you were looking for a hardware answer here, but in the lecture you had mentioned that the operating system is the software version of the hardware CPU, where it helps support the hardware component. So that was my approach in terms of looking at this. But I also mentioned context switching, which to me also includes the conversation of like the timer and mode bits and pieces like that. So I was just wondering what your take is on that kind of response.
Uh, let me answer this question in a more general way. That might be a question of other students as well.
Okay.
If you put something in your answer which is correct to me, and put some other things which might be unnecessary kind of responses to a question, I just ignore them. So if you point to at least one hardware, because here the question says how the CPU helps. When we say CPU, it means that uh, what are the resources or what are the facilities inside your CPU that CPU can help for context switch. If you point to any of them uh, and add other stuff, like for example, the CPU can help run the context switching code. I don't take them wrong, and I don't kind of reduce anything from your grade. So as long as you point to at least one of these two, the answer is to me the answer is okay, and you can get the full grade for this question.
Thank you.
Oh yeah. So the next question again is a multiple choice one. It says which of the following statement is correct. This time we are seeking for a statement which is correct. Item A says among security functional requirements mentioned in FIPS 200, some might not be applicable on some computer system, which is true. We talked about this. Item B says for the sake of performance, security checks do not have to be repeated every time that a non-user tries to log in. This is, of course, a wrong statement. If you remember, we talked about one of the security principles. We called it complete mediation. And we said that complete mediation says you need to repeat all security procedures every time a user tries to access some asset. We shouldn't say, okay, I authenticated this user, let's say, some minutes ago or some hours ago. Let's just trust it. This is the same person. No, this is not how it works. Every time someone or agent. It might be a user or a process on behalf of that user. Uh, every time an agent tries to access some asset, we redo all the security procedures. So of course this is, and this is called complete mediation. So this principle makes item B wrong. Now let's get to item uh, C. Item C says, and again, here we said which statement is correct. You may read A and say, okay, A is correct. Let's just pick A. No, don't do that, please. Read all items, because sometimes you may see something like this: item A and C, item all of the above items, or something like this. So now so far we found A correct, B incorrect, and now let's read C. C says it would be very helpful if our security mechanism take back of each other, so that if one fails, the system is still protected. Again, uh, this is a valid statement. If you remember, one of the security features we said was layered security. We said that it's good to have a layer of protections, not only one layer, so that if one layer fails, the other layer can take back of your system, and your system is still somehow protected. So this is called the layered security feature that we talked about it. So from what we read, we realize that item A is okay, is correct, item C is correct. And we find this here, item D, that says items A and C. So this is the right answer for this question. So for multiple choice question, another advice is just please read all the items. Don't pick the first item you may think it's answer. Free response question 2, briefly explain the vulnerability, threat, attack sequence. So we talked about this sequence, and it is important to me to understand the sequence between, or the chain between, vulnerability, threat, and attack. And we said that vulnerability or exploit is any weakness in your computer system that could be used for to trigger attack. So vulnerability by its own is not a danger. It might be used in developing some threat. So threat is any circumstance or event with the potential to adversely impact security aspects of your computer system. So again, uh, in a threat, you exploit, or you take, or let's say an attacker or a hacker takes some vulnerabilities or exploits and define a situation that might be potentially used to impact confidentiality, integrity, or whatever. But that thing still has not happened. But we call that situation a threat. So it's one level, one step forward with respect to security, but still you haven't lost anything in your system. And eventually we have the attack, which is the actual uh, the threat is kind of being realized into something, and you physically lost some of your items. When I say physically, I don't mean physical. I mean you literally lost some of your assets, or you literally violated some of your security pillars, confidentiality, integrity, or availability. So here is the kind of definition. Attack is any malicious activity that actively attempts to violate one of the security pillars: availability, confidentiality, integrity, accountability, or authenticity. And uh, here you see that we explained each, and also try to show that, okay, we first need to have a vulnerability in our system, and then we define a threat based on that vulnerability, so that we make that vulnerability or exploit, we turn it into a potentially impactful scenario or situation, and then we eventually apply that scenario or situation in order to violate one or some of the security pillars. So that's how the chain is being completed. You first need to find vulnerability, and then you define a threat based on that, and then you apply the threat, which basically is when you're attacking the system in order to break some of the security pillars. Okay, here is a note I put, which is good for you to kind of know. I intentionally have used the exact wording in the slide and textbook to show that you just uh, need to uh, articulate the main ideas. This might not apply to all of you, but I've realized that sometimes when you ask free response questions, some students get this impression that, okay, I should write at least half a page, or I should write at least two-thirds of a page to convince my professor for this question. No, if you just point to the thing which is needed, that's enough. And writing extra, it might not it may be helpful. For example, if you have forgotten some of the key terms, and you, instead of just pointing to them, you try to explain something, that might be helpful in that situation. But if you know the exact thing, you are just good to go and put that exact term or exact definition, and you don't need to explain more. And I know that I intentionally made everything in this exam available to you, so it's okay if you access the slides or textbooks or the internet. That's perfectly fine. But please pay attention that I intentionally make the exam time uh, not that normal 70 minutes, which is, if you have already reviewed the slides and resources, that amount of time should be enough. But if you haven't studied them, that amount of time is not enough for you. So you you probably need to go over the slides and videos, and in that amount of time, you probably will not be able to do that. So the exam is designed in a way that, or assumes that you have studied the resources and you know where, for example, the definitions are. So when you're asked about the definition of vulnerability, threat, and attack, you can just go there and look at the slide, open your slide, and try to answer it. It's perfectly fine. But if you don't know it, it might take a lot of time to find it for you, because it's a lot of slides, it's lot of videos. So let's get to multiple choice 3. Uh, it says it's a scenario, basically, and you're asked to specify what type of malware this scenario is. We have a hacker. The hacker has sent you an email with the URL of the website that offers you a good price on some given products that probably you're interested in. The website is known and legit, so you're redirected to a known website which you know, or for example, like Amazon. However, the hacker has defined a transparent layer so that when you click on the pay button, you at the same time agree to donate $10 to the hacker. So what type of malware is this? Of course, the portion that you are clicking on something, but your click is being used for a different thing, and that should remind you the clickjacking, because we define clickjacking is a situation at which the hacker or the attacker, they define a transparent box or transparent application, and you go to a noun website or noun application, and you think that you're clicking on your ordinary usual application or website, and that's the case. Your click will be eventually transferred there, but your click also be as being used in a different application as well, which is that transparent application. And that transparent application use your click for whatever they need. For example, they ask, are you do you agree donating $10, and you're clicking on yes. So that click is being applied to that yes button, and also it's being sent to the for example, Amazon websites for proceeding for your purchase. So that's why I say we immediately kind of recall the clickjacking. But remember that here everything has started using an URL, using a URL which is being emailed to us. So I would see here a phishing attack as well. And the right answer to this question is combination of A and C. So you are being attacked by a phishing, which is then kind of equate with a clickjacking. So the right answer to this question is item D.
Dr. Patugi, is it possible that it could be either or? Because even like, okay, so with Trojan horse, like they're providing a website that is presenting itself to be good or have good intention, but it's not. So you could argue that it could be that too.
It could be Trojan, but pay attention here that we are saying that you follow a URL which is being emailed to you, right? And you are following. So this part tells me the phishing. When you receive an email and you follow a link in that email, that's phishing. And when you are clicking on something, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna ask because I mean it seemed like the question was kind of tricky because when you ask like which malware it is, I guess I'm not looking for like multiple malwares, and I guess I'm just like I would be confused on like what exactly, like am I looking for all like however many malwares it is just based on the question, because I don't know, like how could it not also be Trojan horse too, or are you only looking for two? I guess I'm not. It's kind of hard to understand like what the question is asking based on that scenario.
For why it is not Trojan, I would argue that this is not Trojan horse because you haven't done. The question doesn't say that you have downloaded something from that website. If you have downloaded something from that website, clearly mentioned in the question that you download a patch or something and then something happened, yeah, that might be a situation for Trojan horse as well. But the question doesn't say that. And for the other part of your question, these type of questions, I agree with you that they might be tricky and tough because sometimes they might be a combination of things, combination of different malwares and attacks that we know. But again, that means that you need to know them ahead of time. But for this specific question, this cannot be Trojan because it doesn't say that you downloaded something or the individual has downloaded something. It doesn't say anything like that. So because of that, I reject the item Trojan horse. Does that make sense to you, Diamond?
Yes, it's just I didn't like on how the definition was presented. I just summarized it as it being a website that is disguised as a positive website, not something that you have to intentionally like download.
Are you arguing that the definition here kind of fulfills the B? Is that what you're saying?
No, I actually clicked C. I actually put C because I was just looking at the end result of them clicking on the actual, like actually like clicking on it. Like I was just looking at that part. So I could see why it's also fishy, but I'm just arguing that if like Trojan horse is something that is disguising itself as something that is good when it's not, then that could also be it too.
I just well because of the definition when I was reading it.
Yes, please, Tim, go ahead.
I was just saying, when reading the definitions, like I had the same similar thing to what Diamond had, so that's why I chose C as well.
And again, this is my explanation. This is of course not a Trojan horse because nothing here is being downloaded. At least it's not mentioned in the question. And why this is phishing? Because you followed an email you received, and that, of course, if it wasn't because of that email, you probably wouldn't have gone to that page at that time, at least. But also let me say that I see here the question says items A and C. If you pick one of the items A and C, because like I said, I already know that situations or scenarios like these, they're somehow, I would say, tough to detect as a someone who exposed to security and malwares very recently. It's not easy to detect the exact situation or say it's a combination of two. I would this is the way I grade this. I assign, if someone says only phishing, they'll receive 70% of their score for this question. If they say C, they receive 70% of this 10 points, which is 7 points. And if they say D, they receive the whole 10 points. So even if you feel that it is only clickjacking, which is a part of the answer, and you mentioned that, you only lose 3 points in this question, which is to me is fair. That 3 extra point is fair for those who is a fair distribution to allocate that 3 extra point for those who detect the exact combination of two malwares here.
Yes, sir. That is fair, sir. That is good. Thank you so much for that, sir.
Okay, you're welcome. So let's get to multiple choice 4. Which of the following statement is correct? A says there are simple countermeasures for botnets that communicate with command and control server with a fixed address. This item is correct. There is a simple countermeasure for those botnets that communicate with the fixed IP address CNC server. What that countermeasure is, do you remember? Anyone can tell me what that countermeasure is? How, if I have a botnet, what was the botnet? Botnet was a group of distributed devices or computers connected to internet. All of them are being controlled or coordinated using a server. For example, I have that server, I control that server, and I say all of my botnets or all of my army to go and DDoS a specific IP. So all of them from all over the world go and DDoS attack to a specific IP address, and then that server is going to be down because, let's say, 1,000 of my agents, they attack to that web server, for example, google.com, at the same time, according to the command I issued, So if the CNC server, command and control server, has a fixed IP address, there is an easy way to fix, and that way is to just pull down the CNC server. If I attack the CNC server, that works like, for example, a single point of failure for that system. If the CNC server is down, the whole botnet army is down. So we talked about it, and we said that that's why CNC servers, they use naming services in order to change their addresses. They don't use a fixed address because they know if their address is being revealed by the protectors or defenders, they can easily kill the whole system. Because of that, the CNC servers use names, policies, and name procedures to change their names and change their IPs. So that item A is correct. Item B says the common payload of spyware malware is information theft that compromises the integrity of the victim's system. The first part of this item is correct. The payload of spyware is information theft. Spywares try to collect information and send that information to someone for use. That's correct, but that doesn't compromise the integrity. That compromises your confidentiality, right? So here, as an outcome of a successful spyware attack, you are losing your confidentiality, not your integrity. That's why item B is not correct. Item C says a hacker needs to put time and effort to implement a backdoor. Why this is not correct? This is not correct because we said backdoor, we defined what are backdoors. Backdoors are shortcuts used by system developers, program developers to debug or test that system or program in a faster or easier way. So I'm developer of a system, I put a backdoor in order to easier debug that thing. So backdoor is not something that a hacker or attacker develops. They just find and use it. They just find and use backdoors. So backdoors are not being implemented by hackers. So that's why item C is incorrect. And final item D says a malware is mostly a compromised software program. It cannot physically damage the victim computer. So again, this is not correct. We have had some malwares that they could physically break computers down, like for example, Chernobyl virus. So physical damages can come out of some malware attack. So this is not correct. So out of the items, only item A is correct. That says a simple countermeasure is to just kill the CNC server. Free response question 3. What are typical phases of operation of a virus or a worm? Okay, we talked about it. We talked about every single step of that, but the cycle or life cycle of a virus of a worm, it it covers these 4 stages or 4 phases. Dormant phase, at which the worm or virus is just silent, doing nothing, and then we have triggered. It's triggered and it's kind of activated and gets propagated and try to propagate itself to different part of that system or different computers through internet. And then virus or worm gets to a situation that gets executed or starts implementing that malicious activity, whatever the malicious activity is. And after the execution is the time that we can expect the user or the system owner detects that something is not right. So that's why anything that needs to be done should be done before execution, because right after execution, the owner or the user understands that, okay, my computer is compromised because it doesn't work normally. My drive, I'm not able to access my drive, or I'm not able to send emails, or blah, blah, something is not working. So they, all of these bad things start happening after the execution of the worm or virus. So free response question 4. Any question? Okay. Free response question 4. What is the difference between phishing attack and spear phishing attack? We have phishing and spear phishing. Both of them mean that you receive email with some bad URLs or bad links in them, which are waiting for you to do something. You might be targeted by, let's say, clickjacking. You might be targeted by a spyware. You might be targeted by malvertising, or many different things. But everything starts with an email. If that emails come, if the recipient of that email is chosen randomly with no prior study or no prior research or no prior collection of data, that's a phishing attack. In a phishing attack, you receive an email that which might come to you, or which might, the same email that you have received may come to me as well. If we are both recipient of a phishing email, we both receive the same thing, the same content, the same email. But in spear phishing, that's a different thing. In spear phishing, the attacker does research about the recipient of that email. For example, tries to find their name, their addresses, where they go, what's their, for example, job, what's their job address, and they compose an email. They create an email that kind of makes a very good sense, or maybe it makes a good scenario that fit that person. For example, they say, "Hey, this is an email from let's say ITS in North Carolina, A&T State University." So since I'm working in A&T, I take that email more seriously. And I read it, everything looks okay to me, unless if you look at the domain, that where exactly the email is coming from. So in spear phishing, email often code triggered information, such as name of you, name of your friends, social media, or your something related to your job, something. I mentioned in the lectures as well. I've received an email, an spear phishing email from my chair, from my ex chair, previous chair, saying that, "Hey, how are you? I'm in a situation. Would you please help me and send me a couple of $100? I'll be giving it back to you soon." And I took it very seriously at the first point, but eventually I tried to reach out to my boss through cell phone and asking him, "Is that you emailing me?" And he said, "No, Iman, it's not me." So yeah, that's how it works. In a spear phishing, they try to customize the email with respect to the information that they have collected for you. That information might be your name, your friend's name, might be your position at job, might be your relation with your upper level or lower level person in your job, anything that makes it more kind of serious to you. So this is basically the definition and the difference between the two types of phishing and spear phishing. So the last question is a bonus question, which asked you kind of judge on a program or a situation. Here it says, assume that we have program D. We don't see the program D, but they told us that the program D is a program which is able to analyze an executable file to detect if they're clean or virus infected. So if we pass something to D, for example, we say D of P, D takes P, program P, and says if P is clean or not. If P is clean, if P is a kind of clean executable file, D returns true, otherwise D returns false, meaning that, okay, P is infected. Now, someone has written a program like this, like CV, and we want to see if D is able to detect CV is malicious or infected or not. And CV is obviously a malicious code, because here it comes in the main program. It says if at some situation it says infect executable. It infects some executable files. So basically, it is a virus tries to propagate. But the way it works, it first checks if D is capable of finding CV's malicious activity. If And this is what CV is doing. CV calls D to see if D is capable of detecting CV as bad. If D returns true, then CV does nothing, because, okay, it understands that this is basically like a situation that I'm a theft and I try to see how the police person is smart or intelligent. If if I realize that the police is smart enough, I don't do anything bad. I just pass by with doing nothing, because I know that if I do something, the police will catch it and will arrest me. But if I realize that the police is not that smart, I start doing the bad things or the malicious thing I wanted to do. So this is how CV is kind of working. CV first checks that D's capability. If realizes that the D will detect him, it does nothing. CV does nothing. But if CV detects that D is not smart enough and D is not able to detect CV's malicious, now it starts doing what it wanted to. So now the question is, am I, as a user or operating system, will I be able to detect CV's malicious activity using D or not? Discuss this situation. And I guess, yeah, here is the exact point, the exact thing that I asked. Discuss under which circumstance D can or cannot correctly decide whether CV is a virus or not. Basically, under some circumstance, D will be able to detect CV. Under some circumstance, D will not be able to detect. And we want to see what is what. So here, look, the main thing that should give you the clue is this. In the CV program, the program CV is calling D. D is basically our antivirus or something, which basically these type of programs, they're being executed in the kernel mode, in a higher level mode. And most of the time, normal program or user programs like CV, they are not allowed to call D. They are not allowed to execute D. So the answer to this question is, if CV is allowed to call D, if we allow CV to call D, in that case, the situation happens that I just explained to you. We have a smart, malicious person that just first check to see if the policeman is smart enough or not. If it detects that the police is smart, it does nothing. If it detects that the police is not smart enough, it starts doing what he or she wanted to. So if the CV is allowed to call D, D can never detect CV's malicious activity, because it either does that thing or doesn't with respect to the situation. But the fact is, if in many cases CV, program CV, is not allowed to call D. So the moment CV reaches to this line, it gets into a trap. And by calling this line, the operating system will realize that CV has something to do. CV is trying to do some malicious thing. And this action by itself, regardless of this action, injecting or infecting the executable file, that's something else. This action by itself can be considered as a malicious request or malicious activity. So if CV is not allowed to call D, which in the most operating systems is the case, D can easily detect CV. So this is the answer to this question. And we discussed that under which circumstance we can or we cannot detect this malicious code. This is extra bonus, so you don't have to answer this. But if you've answered it, you can get up to 15 points. We may have extra bonus questions like this in the actual test, or may not. That's something that you'll see tomorrow. So if there is any question, please feel free to ask.
Yes, I have a question. Well, I guess two questions.
Uh-huh.
How does this sample, like if we completed the sample questions and we got some of the points, how does that work with our overall grade? Is this points towards our exam or is this points towards our overall grade?
The whole sample question, let's say, for example, someone receives 60 for these sample questions. That 60, I'll keep it as a sample, and I add as an extra bonus, and I add all other bonuses to that. And at the end of the semester, I use the bonuses in order to first fill out the portions that you have lost.
Ah, okay, gotcha.
So, and I try to put it in the best position for you. So I normally start with the exams and fill out your exams, and then if you still have extra bonus left, I allocate them to assignments and stuff. So I try to basically I do it person by person. I try to help them to get the maximum out of the extra credits you have received.
Awesome, thank you. And then the other question that I had was about the exam. Could you tell us like how many questions are on the exam?
It would be something this size. I would say maximum 3 to 4 multiple choice, 4 to 5 free response. So it's, in terms of size, it's not bigger than this.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
But thank you for asking, Tia. Again, I restate that I know that the time for that amount of that number of questions is slightly tight, but that is something intentional. Please pay attention, all of you that you are here and all of you that you are watching this video. That's something intentional. I am assuming that you have already read the slides, you know what's where. You don't need you don't need time to find them. You just quickly jump to the right slide and pull up the slide and start writing the answer. Any more question?
So, yes, sir, I have one question, sir.
Uh-huh.
From the material point of view, so the slides are good enough, right, sir, for all the questions? The material
Yeah.
from the slides? Okay.
Yes, thank you for asking that. Yeah, a slide should be enough for you. You don't have to read the whole textbook. But of course, if some points you feel that I'm not, for example, you feel that explanations are not enough, or you need more insight, or you need more explanation, you can just jump to the textbook. But a slide should be enough. Slides plus videos should suffice you for the exams.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Dr. Patui, I have one question, and I may have missed it because I was actually working and I'm on a break now when the video started. But for the test, are we able to go through and answer like the multiple choice and the true and false first and then go back to the short response, or do we have to answer them as they come up?
I guess all of them will be exposed to you at a time. So the way I administer the test is I say all at a time. So you see all questions at a time. That's so you have option to just jump between them up and down. For example, you can answer the last free response question first, and then come to the first question and go to the fifth question. The order is something that you pick, but the whole exam starts. When you start the exam, the whole questions will be shown to you, and you have only 70 minutes to answer all of the questions.
Okay, thank you.
And if you, and the other thing is that you only have one time to answer the questions. So if you click submit and submit your answers, that's it. So please make sure that you are ready and double check your answers before you click on the submit button. Okay, let me see. I see a few items in chat. Yeah, I covered this story. Okay. So is there any question? So if there's no question, I'm gonna stop recording, and